The movie begins with 4 popular high school girls called the Flawless Four, walking through the hallway. Their leader, Courtney, is feisty and like Satan in heels. One of them, named Liz, is loved by everyone because she's usually kind, which makes Courtney mad. On Liz's 17th birthday, 3 masked assailants suddenly come to gag her and throw her in the trunk. It turns out to be her 3 friends, Courtney, Marcie, and Julie. They laugh about the prank and talk about their plans to stuff Liz's face full of pancakes. When they get to a diner where they plan to hang out, the girls excitedly open the trunk, and Courtney takes a picture to capture Liz's surprised face. When they open the trunk, they find Liz dead, with the jawbreaker candy that Courtney had used to gag her to stop her from screaming lodged in her throat. The girls start to panic, surprised that Courtney gagged her with a jawbreaker. They hope Liz is playing a prank on them, but she's long gone. Later, they drive to school, and Julie tells them they have to tell someone, but Courtney refuses because she believes people won't understand. Courtney calls in sick for Liz by impersonating Liz's mother and asking her teacher to give Liz's homework to one of her friends, but Julie refuses to support her decision. When they get to school, Courtney tells them they must all go through school like nothing happened to get through this. The girls walk into the bathroom and chase the other girls out, along with one of Julie's geeky friends, Fern. Their teacher, Miss Sherwood, asks one of them to come pick up Liz's assignment because she called in sick, so Courtney offers to do that. In class, Julie looks uncomfortable and somehow takes the literature teacher's explanation of Shakespeare as an accusation of what they've done. The other girls seem distracted in class too. During lunch, they discuss what they'll do, and Courtney suggests that they frame the situation to look like Liz was sensually assaulted because she was involved in some dirty things. When school ends, Courtney forgets to get the assignments from Miss Sherwood. Meanwhile, Fern goes to see Miss Sherwood and eagerly collects the assignment to take it to Liz's home because she adores Liz. The girls take Liz's body to the house to put her back in her room. Soon after, Fern gets to the house while the girls are inside. Inside, Courtney and Marcie rearrange Liz's body to make it look like she was assaulted by a romantic partner. While Julie goes through their old pictures, Fern stays at the front door and practices how she'll introduce herself to Liz. Meanwhile, Julie mistakenly turns on a digital card that allows you to record a greeting. The card lets out a recording of Liz's voice, which freaks them out. Outside, Fern hears a scream and steps into the house to check on Liz. Inside the room, Courtney snatches the recording greeting card from Julie, who seems to be getting cold feet. Fern goes upstairs and overhears the girls argue about going to the police. Julie angrily leaves, and the 3 girls run into Fern at the door. Courtney probes Fern and asks her what she heard, but Fern sees Liz's body on the bed and runs away with a scream. Courtney and Marcie catch Fern and tell her that her overhearing them gives her the power to tell on them. Courtney pins Fern to a wall and tells her that she's always been hiding in the shadow of everyone in the school because she's nothing, so she offers to make her popular and beautiful so she can hide their secret. Julie tells them to let Fern go, but they don't listen to her. The next day, Fern, who now looks totally different, walks with Courtney and Marcie through the hallways and seems to have joined their group. When Liz's parents return, they find her dead and call the cops. Meanwhile, at school, Julie refuses to hang out with the girls because she doesn't support them. Julie walks up to them and commends Fern's new look. Even though the girls make fun of her, Julie informs them that Liz's parents are back and tells them they need to tell someone. But Courtney tells them they don't need to because she made sure that no one would discover their mistake. When alone, Courtney tells Julie that she has told the other girls that they'll tell everyone she did it if she decides to tell anyone, so it'll be her word against theirs. During lunch, the girls stop Fern from eating because they won't be caught dead eating outside. When Courtney's boyfriend, Dane, approaches them, Courtney introduces Fern as a transfer student named Vylette. Sometime later, while Miss Sherwood is having a smoke, she is approached by a detective named Vera, who has been put in charge of Liz's case. Outside, a guy named Zach approaches Julie and asks to give her a lift since she's not hanging out with her friends. When he drops her off at her house, she gives him her phone number. That night, as Julie goes through some childhood pictures, she sees one with Fern in it, so she decides to call her. When Fern picks up the call, Julie talks to her about how weird things have been since what happened to Liz. They laugh about their childhood memories, but Courtney suddenly calls Fern and insists that she must pick her calls above everything else. Julie eventually hangs up when Fern doesn't get back to her. Meanwhile, Courtney and Dane have some bedroom fun. While they're at it, some police officers come to Courtney's door. Julie goes to Liz's home and stares at her pool in tears. She sees a vision of Liz swimming in the pool, and Liz's mother comes to hug her. The next day, the girls are called in for an investigation, and Vera interrogates them. Vera tries to know who called in sick for Liz and who the guy was with her that night, but nobody says anything. She shows them the jawbreaker candy, which literally can break your jaw. At school, all the students look sad as they hear the news of Liz's death. Later, Vera goes to speak to Miss Sherwood. Vera asks Miss Sherwood about a young girl who was seen at Liz's front door on the day of her demise, and Miss Sherwood informs her that she sent Fern to Liz's home with her homework. That morning, some of the girls on the cheerleading team approach Vylette to get to know her since she's becoming popular. Later, Courtney decides that Vylette needs a boy, so they try to get her into the drama club to get her to meet Zach. While they're signing up, Julie approaches them and greets Fern. The girls correct her by telling her that her name is now Vylette, which Fern affirms. Before the girls walk out on her, Julie goes to meet Zach, and he tries to comfort her about what happened with Liz. He tells Julie he's always liked her, and he knew she liked him too. But he never approached her because she was always with the other girls and never gave time to anyone. He takes her to a secret spot where he goes when he wants to be alone, so they stay there together. Meanwhile, Vera interrogates Vylette and informs her that her teacher said she took Liz's assignment to her home. Vylette tells her that she never officially met Liz, but there was a time when her books fell on the hallway, and Liz kindly helped her. Vylette continues to talk about how she sits behind Liz in class and usually stares at the birthmarks on her necks. Vera tells Vylette that she's only going to be a true friend to Liz by telling the truth, no matter what. But Vylette says she doesn't know anything. That night, Vylette wakes up from a bad dream where she sees Liz and remembers what Vera had told her. The next morning, Courtney calls Vera to give some private information to help the case. She reluctantly tells the detective that Liz had this secret craving for strange men that only she knew about. She tells Vera that Liz would frequently visit bars to see strange men and have one-night stands. When Vera asks if she knows any of the bars she frequents, Courtney gives her a name. In a flashback, a lady is seen going to that same bar and meeting with one of the men, but it turns out to be Courtney, who later goes to secretly make love with the same man. At school, several girls start to reserve seats and bathroom stalls for Vylette because she's the new talk of town. In the drama club, they talk about her, and they wonder who she is. Vylette suddenly approaches Zach and introduces herself as a head cheerleader. She says she's seen 2 of his dramas and tells him he rocked her world. Zach tells her sports and drama don't mix, but she tells him the rules have changed. Later, Vylette goes to make out with some guy who helps her set up a new flashy ride. The next day, she drives the car to school, which makes Marcie and Courtney wonder what she's doing. That afternoon, when Zach and Julie go to their secret hideout, Zach tells Julie that Vylette approached him and asks her if she knows who she is. When Julie informs her that Vylette is Fern, whom Courtney had transformed, Zach wonders why Courtney would ever help Fern, so Julie tells him it's about Liz. When he insists on knowing more, she eventually reveals the secret to him. He tells her she can't keep quiet and she has to tell someone, so she tells him she knows that. At school, Courtney tells Marcie that she's taking Dane to prom so they can win. She tells Marcie that she doesn't care what happens to Dane after because he's just there to make her look good in the yearbook. Marcie complains about how out of control Vylette has been recently, but Courtney tells her that she's just like a thirsty person who hasn't seen water in a while. While they're talking, they find Vylette outside dancing in front of a crowd on her car's hood. Courtney drags Vylette aside and confronts her about disrespecting them. When Courtney tells Vylette she can return her to her identity as Fern since she made her, Vylette tells them they can't do anything to her because she knows what really happened to Liz. Meanwhile, Zach and Julie talk about how they can gather evidence against the other girls. Julie recalls that Courtney had taken a picture of Liz in the backseat after they kidnapped her. They both rush to the diner to find the camera, but they can't find it. Oddly, the picture Courtney took is just a stone's throw away from them. They both rush to see Vera to tell her what they know, but Vera informs them that they have a man in custody based on their investigation, and they would like to run a test on his fluids. When they're alone, Julie realizes that Courtney has framed the poor guy. In school, Vylette arrives and finds posters of her identity as Fern placed throughout the school. She suddenly faints and wakes up in the school clinic. When she wakes up, she tries to pull out all the posters, but the kids at school make fun of her. When she runs into the girls, she faints again, so they make fun of her. When Zach and Julie get to school, they find her on the ground and try to help her. Fern tells them she's nothing and she's a nobody, but Julie tells her that's not true. When the flawless girls approach them, Julie promises Courtney to get back at her. While Julie and Zach take Fern home, they realize that Courtney had made love with the poor guy to frame him. That night, the students attend prom and have some fun, but Julie and Fern are nowhere to be found. At Julie's home, her mom brings some things that belong to Liz that Liz's mother brought because she felt she would want them. Julie opens them and eventually finds the greeting card. When she opens the greeting card, she realizes that Courtney had accidentally pressed the record button and had recorded herself saying that she killed Liz. Moments later, Zach, Julie, and Fern proudly go to prom since they've gotten evidence to prove Courtney's crime. When they walk in, the girls, along with the cheerleaders, make fun of them, but they ignore their jesting. When it's time to announce the prom king and queen, Miss Sherwood comes on stage to do the honors. She names Dane the prom king, and the crowd cheers for him. Meanwhile, Zach goes backstage to plug their recording into the hall speakers. Miss Sherwood soon calls out Courtney as the prom queen, and the crowd goes wild. When she steps on stage to give her speech, Zach plays the recording of her saying she killed Liz. When the crowd realizes it's her voice, they stare at her incredulously, and the entire hall goes silent. From across the hall, Julie sends a kiss to her. The crowd soon starts to throw things at Courtney, So she steps off stage in shame as they claw at her and ruin her makeup. When she gets away from the crowd, Julie takes a picture of her, which eventually gets into the yearbook. What a wild ride. I feel like this was similar to Mean Girls, but with a homicidal twist. What did you guys think of this one? It was made in the 90s.
Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like. It really helps the channel.